World Politics. This is a lecture sponsored by the Institute of World Politics as well. My name is Shayla White. I'm on the event staff here and I'm also a student. So I'm very excited to listen in on this lecture today. For those of you who are new to IWP, it is the Graduate School of National Security, Intelligence, and International Affairs. We offer doctoral and PhD programs, 8 master's degree programs, including 2 online MAs, and 18 certificates of graduate study. If you are interested in learning more about us, please speak to one of our staff at the conclusion of this event or visit iwp.edu. We would like to thank all of our supporters who make our IWP events program possible. To support the work of IWP, please visit iwp.edu/donate. Today we will be hearing from Phillip Kurata and Dr. Elspeth Cameron Ritchie in their lecture entitled The Israeli. Phillip Kurata is a novelist and former journalist writing for the Far Eastern Economic Review. He later worked for the United Press International, Agence France Presse, and Voice of America in Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Beijing, France, and Washington, D.C. Phil served for many years as a writer with the U.S. Department of State, based in Washington, D.C. as well. His first novel, The Reluctant Agent, was published by Washington's Writers Publishing House as the Fiction Prize winner. His most recent novel, The Israeli, published in 2024, is a fictionalized story of the legendary Israeli spy Eli Cohen and examines the destructive power of ethnic hatred. Dr. Elspeth Cameron Ritchie is a forensic psychiatrist with special expertise in military and veterans issues. She has been the chief of psychiatry at MedStar Washington Hospital Center since 2018. She retired from the Army in 2010 after 28 years of service, and holding numerous leadership positions within Army medicine, including psychiatry consultant. And she trained at Harvard, George Washington, Walter Reed, and the Uniformed Service University of the Health Sciences, and has completed fellowships in both forensic and preventative and disaster psychiatry. With that, please join me in welcoming Phillip Kurata and Dr. Elspeth Cameron Ritchie.
So it's a delight to have you here, especially making your way through the storm and the weather. I didn't know how bad the traffic would be. It always is bad. What we're going to do today is I'm going to be talking to Phil and asking him some questions about him and his background, and then moving into what caused him to write this book, which, by the way, is a really interesting book, and you ought to buy it. It's going to be for sale at the end of this. $30, is that right? That's if you use a square, okay. You won't get through it on one reading. It's a very complex and wonderful book, a lot like the Middle East itself. And the book is set in several parts, and we'll go through those in a little bit more detail. At the end, we're going to have a Q&A, and I'd like you, when you ask a question, keep your questions short and pithy so everybody can talk. And it always helps me to know who you are, so if you don't mind saying your name. We are being recorded, though, so be aware of that. So, first of all, Mr. Kurata, how did you get interested in the subject of the Middle East? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, my first contact with the Arab world was with Tunisia, North Africa. And I went there as a student in my junior year in college, and then after college I went back to the Peace Corps for 2 more years, and then after Peace Corps I stayed on as a public health educator for an NGO.
And you decided to write this book on Eli Cohen for what reason?
It's just an unbelievable story. Eli Cohen is a national hero in Israel. He is, there are streets named after him, I think museums in his honor. There have been numerous plays and movies about him in Hebrew. When I heard about this from a friend, he told me that, well, I learned that Eli Cohen is not widely known in this country. And even among a lot of American Jews, they haven't heard of it. So I thought this was a low-hanging piece of fruit, and I was going to write it.
One thing I found reading the book is I really didn't know very much about the history of the Middle East post-World War II. And I should, but I don't. Well, I do now. And so I think it would help you, and it helped me to learn a little bit about what was happening in the rise of Zionism, the rise of nationalism, and really when the colonial powers of Britain and France lost their grip on the Middle East. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, okay. When I talk about this story, people often respond, well, Arabs and Jews have been fighting for centuries. Actually, I don't think that's true. I think that the conflict came between the two world wars, and there was the Zionist movement had European Jews going to Palestine, and then they came in conflict with the Palestinians over land. And it's pretty much a 20th century phenomenon. When the British left, there was no longer any empires, and it was settled by war.
And what was going on with Nasser and Egypt and kicking the non-Egyptians out of Egypt?
Well, the Pan-Arab movement, Pan-Arabism, was led by Nasser in the early 1950s, and he used the military and the Muslim Brotherhood to establish his power. And the Muslim Brotherhood did not like non-Muslims. So there was a very colorful, vibrant mosaic of minorities in Egypt up until the early 1950s. There were Italians and Greeks, Armenians, just a whole bunch of them in addition to the Jewish minorities. So Nasser expelled them all. And many came to the United States, and a lot went to Israel. And my hero, Eli Cohen, went to Israel. He played a major role in running an underground railroad for Egyptian Jews to Israel, and he helped them keep their wealth as much as he could. And, he was instrumental in that, and I think that the Mossad knew of his background, and they were very interested in having him.
And before we get to that, one other thing that I learned from this is how influential and wealthy and well assimilated Jews were in Egypt, that it was the part of the fabric of their life. My father worked in Cairo for a while, and he used to say that it was a lot like New York in all its different cultures, but 3,000 years older.
Yeah.
So the book is set in several stages. The first one is in Alexandria, Egypt, and next we go to Israel. Then there's a brief stint in Argentina where Eli is trained to become a spy for the Israelis, and then the last part of it is set in Syria. And what we thought we'd do is have Mr. Kurata read a passage from 3 different sections of it. There's a lot more in there, but we can't do it all tonight. And that we would trace some of it. One of the pieces of this is Eli initially very much wanted to assimilate in Egypt. He wanted to join the Egyptian military, and he and his friend went to try to enlist. Are you ready to read that section?
Yeah, okay. I'll just add very quickly that the Egyptian minority the Jewish minority in Egypt they controlled a big part of the economy. They had the biggest department stores. The rabbi of Cairo and the rabbi of Alexandria both made public statements that they are against Zionism. They wanted to keep their community there. Here's a couple of pages from the scene where he tries to enlist. And we're inside the recruitment office, Eli and his friend Sami Azar. The recruiter lit a cigarette and examined Eli's identification card. Seconds passed. A lump of ash fell from his cigarette onto the desk. At length he looked up. "You're a Jew. Why do you want to enlist in the Egyptian army?" "I'm Egyptian. I was born here. I want to serve my country," Eli said. "Jews don't serve in the Egyptian army. They pay an exemption tax. That's the procedure." The recruiter pushed Eli's identity card back across the desk toward him. Eli pushed it back toward the recruiter. "I don't want an exemption. I want to serve my country. Egypt is my country," Eli said. "You want to serve your country, Egypt," the recruiter repeated slowly. He flicked the ash off his desk and took another pull on his cigarette. "I was born in Egypt. I march in the streets against the British. I want Egypt to be free from colonialism. It's time for all Egyptians to stand together. The British have kept their foot on our necks too long. It doesn't matter how we pray," Eli said. "I've never seen a Jew who wants to serve in the Egyptian army," the recruiter said. "Respectfully, sir," Sami said, "we want a modern, prosperous Egypt. I dare say that you are a supporter of the Wafd Party, as we are. It's an enlightened party. We modern men want an Egypt for all Egyptians. We want an Egypt that doesn't discriminate in favor of or against anyone. You have the definite air of an enlightened man. I can see that by your appearance." The recruiting officer eyed Sami warily. "I read the newspapers and listen to the radio," Sami said. "We all know that the mullahs of the Muslim Brotherhood and royalists, nationalists, and other pretenders are chasing power. I can see that you know that in your eyes. You know that Egypt needs an army of more than illiterate peasants." Eli chimed in. "Indeed, sir, this is exactly why we want to serve. Look at the English. They have all kinds of soldiers in their ranks. You see them walking around the streets here in Alexandria. Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Gurkhas, Greeks. They all wear the same uniform and serve the same government. My friend here and I are educated. We know languages, accounting, electronics. Egypt needs us." "In theory," the recruiter said. "Give us a chance. It is possible to be Jewish and Egyptian," Eli said. "Yes, sir, give me a chance. Give us a chance. You will not be disappointed," Sami said. "Do you know what the chief rabbi of Egypt, Chaim Nahum, said? Also the chief rabbi of Alexandria, Moshe Ventura, said the same thing. Both of them said Egyptian Jews are against Zionism," Eli said. "This is highly unusual. I'll have to consult with my superior." The recruiter got up and left the office. Sami dug dirt from under his fingernails with a penknife and flicked it on the floor. Eli sat stonily. "He's got no guts, Eli. None of them has any guts. There's no way they're going to take us. The only way they would take us would be for us to bribe them." "If they take me, I'm going in," Eli said. "Mark my words," Sami said. The recruiter came back with an older officer who was heavier and had 2 stars on each shoulder board. The older officer sat down at the desk and leaned forward on his elbows. "So you want to enlist? Tell me, who is the biggest enemy of Egypt?" the older officer asked. "Either of you." His eyes darted back and forth between Eli and Sami. "The British," Eli said. "The British," the older officer repeated. "Of course the British. They occupy our land and control our canal and siphon away our wealth," Eli said. "Jews are streaming into Palestine. They call it Israel. Is Israel an enemy of Egypt?" The older officer asked. No, not at all. Israel and Egypt will live side by side as neighbors, Eli said. Mm-hmm. Forget about the British. Answer this. If Egypt went to war with Israel, would you kill Jews? Eli looked at the officer, then at Sammy. He had not anticipated this question. Why hadn't he? He had anticipated questions about Egyptian sovereignty, opposing imperialism, the loyalty of the Jewish community to Egypt. He prided himself on looking ahead and anticipating challenges. He thought he could see what was coming at him. He believed he possessed superior intelligence. Many years earlier, his jaw had locked up when he was confronted with an unexpected question at the yeshiva. Since then, he had trained himself to think ahead about every possible challenge he could face. Sammy sat silent. Would you kill Jews if Israel and Egypt went to war? The older recruiter asked again. Sammy glowered at the officer. His face looked like a piece of red iron pulled from a forge. Sir, I am ready to die defending my country. I would defend Egypt against all aggressors, Eli said. Answer my question. Would you kill Jews if Israel and Egypt went to war against each other? The job of a soldier is to kill the enemy, the officer said. Let me make one thing very clear, sir, Eli said. Israel and Egypt are not going to go to war. We are going to be the best of neighbors. We have too much in common. We are the people of the book. We are all Arabs. It doesn't matter how we pray. We will not make the same mistakes as the barbarians in Europe. What they did in the European war was unthinkable. It was the Europeans who drove out the Jews. Muslims and Christians and Jews have always lived in peace together in the Middle East. We are going to help each other. Isn't that right, Sammy? Sammy stared frozenly at the recruiter. Eli continued. My friend here, Sammy, and I are ready to do anything to defend our country. Right, Sammy? Sammy snapped out of his trance. That's right, officer, Sammy said. We are patriotic Egyptian Jews. Egypt needs us. We will be Egypt's bridge to Israel. There will be no Israel. There is only a foreign imperialist plan to create a Zionist entity. The Arabs will never let that happen, the older officer said. Yes, I misspoke, sir. The problem is the European Jews have brought the European disease to Palestine with them. We, the Middle Easterners, will talk sense to them. That's what's going to happen. Sammy smiled broadly. Take a chance on us. We're going to help Egypt build a better future. Eli looked at the older and younger recruiters boldly. Take a chance on us. You'll be happy you did. The older officer's complexion turned red. A chance? Take a chance that you would betray us? You Jews will betray us if you give us the chance. The senior officer turned to his subordinate. You see, Mahmoud, they are very clever. They are the cleverest people in the world. That's why no one trusts them. Facing Eli and Sammy, the officer shouted, Get out! Get out! Now, before I have you arrested and investigated. He threw the enlistment papers back at Eli and Sammy. You have no idea how much I love Egypt, Eli said. The junior officer stood up and shouted, Get out! In the name of Allah, get out before you are arrested and investigated. Sammy picked up the enlistment papers, grabbed Eli's elbow and pulled him out.
So for those who just came in, the way we're doing this is we're having a little bit of historical discussion and then the reading and then back, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A. One thing I think is important for the folks to know to bridge this is what happened to Sammy, who was also his historical character. Can you speak a little bit about that before we move into our Mossad adventure?
Sure. So, those of you who are familiar with Israeli history, you may have heard of the Lavon affair. And that was a harebrained scheme on the part of Israel to sow discord in Egypt to make it appear that Egypt could not control its own people, and that would prompt the British to stay and not relinquish the canal. It failed. Sammy was involved in it, and he was caught and executed because of that. And he and Ellie were like brothers, and that had a deep impact on the rest of Ellie's life.
And as I understood it, was really very pivotal in changing Ellie from wanting to join the Egyptian military to going to Israel, and then eventually, as we'll hear, being recruited by the Mossad to be a spy.
Yeah. Ellie early on he loved the Arabs. He considered himself to be culturally Arab. And then he was changed into a hater of Arabs.
But at times he liked his Arab friends a lot more than especially the European Jews in Israel, who looked down on him for being an Arab Jew.
So this scene is the first contact where a Mossad officer tries to recruit Ellie. And Ellie is not interested. He is married. He's expecting a child. And this is not for him anyway. So the recruiter's name is Zalman. Very well, Zalman, I'll be frank. You European Jews have foggy ideas. You think that peace with the Arabs is possible. Precisely, Ellie, precisely. We need you to help blow away that fog. Ben Gurion and Sharet and all of you other European Jews have read too many books. Your ideas about peace come from books, not life. Precisely, Ellie, precisely. That's the problem of many of us Europeans. We are overly proud of our scholarly traditions. May I ask if you have an opinion about Begin? Zalman asked. Begin? I don't know much about politics. Let me pass on that, Ellie said. Come, Ellie. Give me an answer, just to be jolly. This conversation is going nowhere, Zalman cajoled. He barks a lot. He's a nasty one, but he barks the truth. It is not possible to have peace with Arabs. We share your opinion, Ellie. That is why I have come to see you. Making peace with the Arabs is like writing a contract in sand. And working with us would appeal to your patriotism, Zalman said. I'm sorry, Zalman. The timing is not right. You have to keep searching. By working with us, you would be helping make Israel safe for your children, Ellie. Please consider that. You have a rare combination of talents. So you've been watching me for some time. How long? One more thing, Ellie, please. When you worked in the underground in Egypt, did you enjoy it? Enjoy it? What a preposterous thing to ask. Come. You said they were heady days. It was my duty, I told you. I'll venture to say that was the time of your life. No one does what you did unless you enjoyed it. So, precisely, Ellie. I was alive. I enjoyed deceiving and bribing worthless dogs. It would have been more fun if I had been able to kill them. If you could turn back the clock, would you do it again? Zalman asked. That's hypothetical. I don't think about hypotheticals. Have you considered what your life as an accountant will be like? It will be good, Ellie said. Day after day, week after week, decade after decade, poring over numbers. The time has come for me to be a father, Ellie said. Joshua was a father. Joshua? Why do you bring him up? He was a magnificent Hebrew warrior, an idol of yours. How do you know that? Eli asked. Joshua led us to conquer, hold, and prosper in our land. Joshua had a destiny, and so do you, Eli. Men of your quality are rare. You have a destiny to fulfill. I'm sure you know that. I'm sure you say that to everyone, Zalman, Eli said. He drank off the last of his tea, and strangely his throat constricted, and the tea did not pass down. He managed, after a long second, to take a difficult gulp. I am not in a position to entertain your proposition, Zalman. He placed his cup in its saucer with a clink. Understood then. Please, one more thing. Do not mention our conversation to anyone, Zalman said.
Okay, so Eli is successfully recruited. He gets sent down to Argentina, where he gets all the trappings of a rich playboy, and he goes to Syria as and he goes to Syria. One of the things that I found so interesting about him is Eli ends up finding the locations of the artillery at the Golan Heights, which it's all transmitted to Israel, and during the Six-Day War, the Israelis are able to take over very quickly because they know where all the bombardments are. One thing we haven't talked yet here about is the influence of the Cold War. So at this point, you have the Soviet Union, who is helping out in Syria and in Egypt, and the US is behind Israel, so the beginnings of some of that Cold War infrastructure. Now, I know we're going short on time. We're going to have a Q&A after the end of this section, so why don't you go ahead with your third passage?
So this is the last conversation between Eli and Colonel Suidani, who was the chief of military intelligence in Syria, and it was Suidani that tracked him down.
And to clarify, at this time, Eli's been arrested and discovered to be a spy and arrested
Yes,
in Syria.
that's right. So this picks up in the middle of their conversation. Suidani, look at the countries that have Jews. They prosper. Look at the countries that don't. They fail. Look at you Syrians. Look at Egypt. What has Egypt amounted to after Nasser kicked us out? Nothing. All you Arabs do is scream about destroying Israel. You can't fight. Many of you can't read or write. Your pan-Arabism only covers up your silliness. That's going to change, Suidani said. We have the Ba'ath Party now. Suidani's eyes blazed. Bah! There's only a Syria because the imperialists gave it to you. Syria wasn't worth their trouble to keep. They have inserted you Jews into our region to continue their dirty work, Suidani said. And you have become the lackeys of the Russians because that is what you are, lackeys. For the Turks or the French or whoever, you will be their lackeys. Look what you have done since your independence. Little boys playing king for a day in the sand. That's going to change now, Suidani said. Bah! It is the servants who take money, not the masters. The Russians will take your naval base in Tripoli. They will feed you with Mercedes cars and trips to Moscow and nights with whores, because that's how they keep their lackeys happy. They will enslave you to do their bidding, and you will point your fingers at Israel to blame for your problems. Jews are cleverer than Arabs. That's true, Suidani said with a red face. The difference between us is that we know nothing comes easy. We do what is hard, that is the only way. We learn the languages, the sciences, the politics, the business ways of the West. You learn nothing. You resist learning. You blame your ignorance on Jews. You have only yourselves to blame for your ignorance. Well spoken, but what have you done for us? Suidani asked. We bring you trade, we bring you education, we bring you pride. No, you subjugate us. Nothing of the sort. We're a minority. We've never subjugated anyone. How can we trust the Jews? Suidani asked. I tried to enlist in the Egyptian army. They rejected me because I'm a Jew. I did not want to go to Israel. I wanted to live in Egypt. That is where I was born. I became a Zionist because you foolish Arabs gave me no choice. And you have ruined your country with your hatred of Israel. You've taken Arab land. This is the first time the Arabs have their own land. We are not ruled by the French, nor by the Ottomans, nor by Persians, nor by Greeks, nor by Romans. We are proud to have our own land. Do you understand? Oh, I understand, Eli said. That is how I corrupted you. I played the Syrian patriot and smothered you with money and women. Let's be clear. You did not win your land. It was given to you. You were too weak to win it, and you were too weak to hold it. It's a shame that you aren't a Muslim, Cohen, Suidani said. It is a shame that you aren't a Jew, Suidani. We might have been friends, Eli said. Outrageous, outrageous, Suidani shouted. Your hatred of us will get you nowhere. I have delivered maps of the Golan Heights to Israel. They will annihilate you if you ever attack us. You have done incalculable harm to Syria, Suidani said. If you spare my life, I will be able to work for better relations between our countries. There is no way you will live, Suidani said. I know that. Your Arab pride blinds you. You Zionists must return the Palestinians to their land. It is only fair, Suidani said. I have seen the Palestinian camps in Syria. Syrians treat dogs better than they treat the Palestinian refugees. Israel's appetite for land is insatiable. There is no end how far Israel will expand its boundaries. Sadly, Eli said. Sadly what? Sadly, your nationalism and my Zionism are fated to hate each other, Eli said. Suidani lit a cigarette, and Eli took a sip of coffee. They both knew they had reached the end of the conversation. They knew Eli would die, and the hatred between the two peoples would live on.
So we have a few minutes for Q&A. As I mentioned before, if you wouldn't mind saying your name, I'll start the Q&A off. How was Eli caught as a spy?
Well, we don't know definitely. There are several theories. The one that I went with is that there was problems with his transmissions to Israel. It was causing static with other electronic in his neighborhood, which was an upscale neighborhood near the defense ministry. And so Suidani had the electricity shut off on a Sunday morning, and these electronic gear was put into these trucks disguised as laundry trucks, and they circulated in the neighborhood, and they pinpointed where the emissions were coming from, and that's how they captured him.
And he was too slow with the cyanide tablet, so they caught him before he could suicide. So he ended up being executed. Questions from, yes sir.
Yeah, so I'm Aaron, I work here. My question is, so given modern day, I guess, easing of tension, at least somewhat, with the new Syrian government, why do you think that is, and what do you think what comparisons do you think exist, if any, to what you write about in the Israeli?
Well, Israel has a new government. It's led by a former Islamic terrorist.
Or not Israel?
Israel has a new government, Syria has.
Syria.
Yeah, Syria. Yeah.
And they need a little bit of room to establish,
Uh-huh.
to consolidate their power. That's my reading of it.
And I think like everything in the Middle East, it's incredibly complicated and complex. We could be here for 2 hours talking about it. Sir?
My name is Baruch. You mentioned the story about Eli Cohen and his friend trying to become soldiers in Egyptian army. Certainly in France, we know about Dreyfus' story. We know that many German Jews were assimilated in the German army. This story, that the only one Jewish young man wanted, or there are some other examples that if you know, if they actually served in the Egyptian army. Also, I never heard about that. It's very interesting.
Did you catch the
You
question?
didn't, could you repeat the
Let
question?
me try it.
Okay.
Whether other Egyptians were able to serve in the, other Jews were able to serve in the Egyptian military.
They were unique, or there are some other Egyptian Jews who actually already served in the army. Egyptian.
I do not know.
Okay.
Let's see, the lady in the blue shirt and then the gentleman behind her.
Hello, my name is Roxanne Sawyer. How much of the book, I know it's fiction, but it's based on historical figures, so how much was fictionalized, or what aspects of his life were fictionalized?
Yeah, so the major events of his life, it's kind of like the skeleton of the story. And then I filled in the details, like the bedroom scene between Ellie and his wife.
Who is still living, correct?
Yeah, she's still alive.
So he was careful with the bedroom scenes.
Yeah, I mean, the main events are true.
And I think what you layered on it was a lot of the smells and the spices and the family interactions and the sort of clashes of modern people growing up in a conservative, either Jewish or Muslim tradition, and that all really informs the reader with the sense of this part of the world. Sir, and you're a friend, you remember here, I met you earlier.
Hi, my name is John. I was interested in how long it took you to research the book, and did you have to travel to the areas to uncover some facts?
Yeah, I did a lot of research. There's one very good biography of him. There's a number of little thin pulp novels about him. So, yeah, I would take maybe a statement or one paragraph of fact, and then I would blow that into a chapter, or half a chapter, or a scene. And then I used my iPhone for a lot of research. I mean, it's amazing how much information I got with my iPhone about history and culture and vocabulary. And then I worked in the Middle East office at the State Department, and I traveled there on work occasionally. And then I worked in Iraq during the war for a year. And yeah, then I had 5 years living in Tunisia, so that's that's my experience in the Middle East.
Okay, sir, I think this will need to be our last question, is that correct?
Hello, I'm Leon Weintraub. Since you described Eli as having been raised in Egypt, grew up in Egypt, developed his cover in Argentina, what type of a cover story did he have in Syria that he was able to rise to such a high level of significance?
So there was a fellow named Kamal Amin Thebit, who was, there was a real person of that name, of Syrian origin, and who was dead, and who had emigrated to Argentina. There was a great exodus of people from greater Syria, meaning Lebanon and Syria, to North and South America toward the beginning of the 20th century. And so there was a sizable Syrian community in Argentina. So Eli presented himself as the son of a successful, wealthy Syrian businessman, and who dreamt of helping Syria return to its past glory. And so Eli had a lot of money. He spoke Syrian Arabic. Very charming fellow. And he could ingratiate himself into the military elite and the political elites, and with bribery and other things. So yeah, he was actually, I believe this is fact, he was under consideration for Deputy Defense Minister of Syria at the time of his capture. Quite a story.
One sub-theme, which we won't have time to go into here, but how important the different dialects and ways Arabic is spoken and how well you're accepted. Is that accurate?
Well, there are many, many dialects of Arabic, yes.
Well, with that, I think we are at time. We're going to do the book signing in here first and then outside, or start outside? Start outside. Okay, I've brought bookmarks there that are yours for the taking, and then they've got a table set up if you want to buy a book, and we're always looking for people to review the book, so if that's of interest. And as a final point, the gentleman in the back row said he was looking for words of wisdom from today. I hope you've received some words of wisdom and areas to reflect on. Thank you very much.